So एक और करते हैं. Let's try. There's a reaction of they're saying that Ki reacts with K2S2O8. You have to figure out what the reaction is. So this is what we're going to try and predict. First thing, what are your reactants? You got K plus 1, and you've got I minus 1. And then I have K2S2O8. So that's K plus 1, and that's S2O8 2 minus. अच्छा इसका थोड़ा ख्याल रखना है कि I mean you should be able to figure out ions. K is always plus 1, right? So S2A2 should be 2 minus over here. So these are my reactants. K plus 1. So K plus 1 go. I just write it one time. Remove one of the K plus 1s, right? And I'm going to try and figure out all the equations. K plus 1, I minus 1, S2O8 2 minus. So if I open the data booklet, which is here, so let's start with K samne hoga, K plus 1, right? So remember we found K plus 1. Okay, that's over here. Or kaun tha? I minus 1. I minus 1 is over here. And we need S2O8 2 minus, which probably is, that's the only place it is. That's it. So we've got S2O8 2 minus. 2.01 volts, and you've got baki kya hai? You got K plus 1, minus 0.83 and minus 2.92. Now the lowest potential loses electrons. So the lowest at the moment is this one. K wala na, that's the lowest, right? But I can't use that because I don't have K. K is the one that's going to lose electrons, so that doesn't make sense. So I'm going to cut this out. Ye clear hai? Abhyab, Alicia, is this clear? Shian, Nasib, is this clear that I'm removing this one, right? That can't be the lowest one. Because I don't have K. Who's the lowest now? The lowest is this one. It's not minus 0.83, just a second. Niche wala hai. So the lowest is 0.54. That's my lowest. And that makes sense. The lowest is going to lose electrons, and I do have I minus 1, right? So that makes perfect sense. I minus 1 is the one that's losing electrons. Then who's gaining electrons? The one that has the highest potential, right? So the highest one is this one, 2.01. And so that's the highest one. And that's the one that's going to gain electrons. And that's fine because I do have S2 2 minus. So I figured out the reactions. I had two equations, and let me just copy the two equations. So I had two equations. The K plus 1 did not work out. The I minus 1, ye wali kaam kar gayi. I2 plus 2 electrons in equilibrium with 2I minus 1, and that's what, 0.54 volts, and the other one is S2O8 2 minus plus 2 electrons, and that was 2SO4. And that was 2.01 volts. Lowest loses electrons, and the highest gains electrons. And I have both things. I have I minus 1 losing electrons and S2O8 gaining electrons. That's and now using that I can make the overall equation, which is going to be what? Okay, add up the reactants. So now I'm not going to rewrite the equation. I'm just going to do it over here. What are my reactants? It's 2I minus 1 Petty equation, it's 2i minus 1. That's my reactant, right? The electrons are already balanced, gain and lost. H2O8, that's the reactant in the other equation. So add up your reactant. And we're going to add up the products. The products would be, first one, the product is I2, and the second one, the product is SO2, SO4, 2 minus. Okay, that's your equation. And you can, that means K plus 1 is not doing anything. And your E naught cell is going to be reduction potential minus oxidation potential, which is the difference, 2.01 minus 0.54, which is going to give you 1.47 volts. ठीक है, clear है ये वाला? Is this clear? Yes or no? अच्छा, so next one. अच्छा, let's say I want to do, I'm just doing random stuff. ठीक है, so remember we can predict any reaction. So let's say I want acidified H2O2 and it's reacting with SO2. And I want to predict what the reaction is. So I've got, acidified means I've got H plus 1 as well. So I've got two reactants. Now remember, H2O2 is a covalent molecule, and SO2 is a covalent molecule as well. Don't convert that into ions. They're not ions. Okay? So, I mean, you can convert NaCl. You can treat NaCl as Na plus 1 and Cl minus 1, but you can't convert, you have to treat H2O2 as one thing. So H2O2 and SO2, and remember it's acidified as well. So इसको हम पहले मिटा देते हैं. Let's just a second. So let's start with this one. I'll just use a starting with SO2. So we've got, remember, water is fine. Now here's a reaction where SO2 is with water. Remember, most of the stuff that you're doing is you're doing it with aqueous things. So there's nothing wrong with this equation. I can even, let me just copy this equation. जो SO2 वाली equation, I'll just copy it over here. Just 1 second. It's SO4 minus 2 and plus 4H plus 1 plus 2 electrons. And it's in equilibrium with what? SO2 plus 2H2O. And the value is 0.17 volts. That's the first one. We found the SO2 equation. Or acidified H2O2. So H2O2, try and figure out here's one H2O2, right? So let's mark this one and let me just quickly copy it over here. Okay, it's O2 plus what? 2H plus 1 plus 2 electrons. And in equilibrium with what? H2O2. And the value for this is 0.68 volts. Is there any other equation for H2O2 anywhere? There's this one, ऊपर वाली. Okay, that's H2O2 plus. So let me just mark it over here. So I've got H2O2 and it's acidified. It's got acid with it, so that's fine. H2O2 plus 2H plus 1 plus 2 electrons. And it's in equilibrium with 2H2O. And its potential is 1.77. Let's try and figure out, is there any other equation for H2O2? यहाँ पे नहीं है. I guess no equations. I said no equations over here. Okay, H2O2. I guess there are no other equations. So we'll go back to our board. And let the board update. So these are the equations I just marked, right? So I marked any equation that had SO2 in it, and I marked any equation that had H2O2 in it, right? अच्छा फिर मैं एक दफा वैसे check कर रहा था. I think we missed some equation. I guess we got all of them. So these are the equations. So who's the one that's going to gain electrons? Who's got the highest potential? So the highest potential is the last one. Okay, that's my highest potential, and that's the one that's going to gain electrons. So that is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, because I do have H2O2 and it's acidified as well. So I've got this acid over here as well. So that's fine. I figured out I figured out who's going to gain electrons, and now I have to figure out who loses electrons, and that's going to be the first one, the lowest one. So that's my lowest one, and that's the one that's going to lose electrons. So that's fine. I've got both of them. Water, go Vessi by default. Just remember you've got water everywhere, so count that in. And you have to make the overall equation. So instead of wasting time, just make the overall equation by making sure the electrons are equal. The electrons are already equal. Was your first or third equation, the electrons are already equal. Add up the reactants. So the first reactant in the first equation, that's SO2 and 2H2O. So you got SO2 plus 2H2O, and add up the reactants in the second equation, which is H2O2 plus 2H plus 1. So that one is and you can then write the products. What are the products? What are the products in the first one? It's SO4. It's SO4 2 minus plus 4H plus 1, and in the product in the second one, that's plus 2H2O. So now think of it as a math equation. You can remember, if you've got things on both sides, they get cancelled out. This case, like if I make the overall equation, which I basically just added up the two half reactions, right? So what is going to get cancelled out? The water is going to get cancelled out, and two of the H plus ones will get cancelled out as well. The right side winner, you'll just be left with 2H plus 1. So the simplified equation would be SO2 plus H2O2, and the product that you're going to have is going to be SO4 2 minus plus 2H plus 1. Okay, that's Shan mic मेरे ख्याल से on है, पता नहीं किसी का mic on है. Abdullah, space bar use करके mic off. But use the space bar when you want to talk. ठीक है. अच्छा ये भी clear है ये वाला? Clear है? अच्छा, so let's अच्छा ये वाला end वाला काम. Remember this, that when you make the overall equation, अच्छा you can पहले हम वो कर रहे थे ना, what we used to do was we would waste time that मैं उनको पहले CD करके लिखता था, then I would add them up. You can just ignore that step and you can just add it in one go. दोनों के reactants देखो and just make sure that the number of electrons on both sides are equal. The reason we didn't consider the second equation was that the highest potential gains electrons. So that means this one has the greatest tendency to gain electrons, right? It's It's 1.77 volts. And the lowest potential loses electrons. So the first one has the lowest potential. It is the one that's going to lose electrons. तो इसकी बारी नहीं आएगी. मतलब वो है ना कि you've got potentials, right? You've got three things. Like think of it as electricity. So electrons would flow from in which direction? They're going to flow from the highest potential towards the lowest one. बीच में जो भी potentials हैं उनको bypass कर देंगे because the electron is going to go all the way to the lowest one. ठीक है, the lowest one loses electrons. Sorry, the electrons would flow from the lowest to the highest, right? So इसकी बारी नहीं आएगी basically. ठीक है, but think of this as इस तरह की this. Let's say there are three particles, right? Or there are three processes that are happening. This one has a voltage of 1.77 volts. This one has a voltage of 0.68. And this one has a voltage of 0.17. So the electrons would flow from the lowest towards the highest, right? That's where the electron would flow. The lowest one would produce electrons. The highest one would end up gaining electrons. So the middle one, that will just be a spectator ion. Abdullah, clear? अच्छा वो क्वेश्चन के क्लियर है ना जिसने भी पूछा था and also Abia, remember this, that this is a simplified version of the original reaction. The original reaction is this one. This is the original reaction. ठीक है, this one over here is the simplified version of the reaction. Abia, is that clear? Okay, when you see this, this is not all that's happening. बीच वाले जो steps है ना वो बीच में ये overall है, ठीक है? This is the overall. The middle steps, I mean, this was the loss of electron. This one was the one that was actually happening, and this is the gain of electrons, right? So the actual reaction is this one and this one. This one is the overall result. What is the overall result of the whole thing? ठीक है, Abhi, is that point clear? Achha, the other part. Achha, the other part. The further examples. We'll do one more. Achha, then there's going to be an even more difficult version of the same thing. The same stuff that you're doing. There's going to be a slightly more difficult question. वो main पे करते हैं, ठीक है? Achha, let's do another one. We have. So I want to figure out a reaction. What's going to happen if I have CrCl2 and that CrCl2 wants to react with acidified potassium dichromate 6, which is basically K2Cr2O7, and it's acidified. Okay, so you've got lots of things happening over here. You've got so what are your reactants? You got Cr2 plus. So we've got Cl minus 1. So K2Cr2O7, you got K plus 1. You got Cr2O7 2 minus. Plus आपके पास you also have H plus 1, right? So you got that as well. So lots of things, and we have to figure out the same thing. So यहाँ पे I'll just again do it over here. Now Cr2 plus. I've got two equations for Cr2 plus. Here's one, minus 0.41, and there's another one, Cr2 plus. Cr2 plus is over here as well. So I'm going to mark that as well. So then I've got Cr2O7 2 minus, right? Acidified. So there's only one equation. Plus it's got an acid with it as well. We had Cl minus 1 as well. Where's Cl minus 1? I'm going to use this electrode. Use the Cl minus 1, this electrode, because यहाँ पे ना the Cl minus 1 needs to have OH minus 1 with it. Cl minus 1 plus OH minus 1. I don't have OH minus 1, so I'm not going to use this electrode. अच्छा, और कौन सा? I think I had K plus 1 as well. So we're going to do एक नीचे है K plus 1. So there's a K plus one over here. And hopefully I didn't miss anything, right? These were the substances I had. Cr2 plus, Cl minus 1. Two equations for Cr2 plus, Cr2O7 K plus 1, right? So the highest potential gains electrons. Who's got the highest potential out of all of them? The highest is this one at the moment, 1.36. Well, compare, Carlo. That's the highest. It's 1.36. This one is minus 0.91. This one is minus 0.41, 1.33, and minus 0.83. So the highest one is the one that's going to gain electrons, right? But I can't use that. Because I don't have Cl2. Cl2 is the one that's going to gain electrons to form Cl minus 1. We don't have Cl2 in our reactants, okay? In our reactants, there was Cl minus 1, but definitely not Cl2. So I'm going to cross this one out. Acha, usko nikal do. This is not, I mean, although it is the highest, but we don't have Cl2. Acha, who's the highest now? The highest is 1.33. Now the highest is the one that's going to gain electrons, and that's fine. It's so that means Cr2O7 2 minus 14H plus 1 is the one that's going to gain electrons. That's the highest, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. Because I do have Cr2O7 2 minus as well. So let me just copy this equation over here. Because I found the highest potential. It's equation Cr2O7 2 minus plus 14H plus 1 plus 6 electrons and आगे जाके क्या बना? It's 2Cr3 plus and I guess 7 H2Os, and this is 1.33 volts. See, the board के ऊपर I've copied this one, ठीक है? अच्छा, so that's there. अच्छा, the other one. Now move on to the lowest one. Who's the lowest? The lowest at the moment is minus 0.91. So that's the lowest. The lowest is the one that's going to lose electrons. But I can't use that. Okay, if I use that, it's Cr that's going to lose electrons. I don't have Cr. मेरे reactant में था ही नहीं. The only things that I've marked, these are the ones that I have in my reactant, so I can't use this. So I'm going to cross this out. Actually, if I ignore that, who's the lowest now? Actually, the lowest was actually potassium. But I can't use that as well. The lowest is the one that's going to lose electrons, and it's going to be potassium that loses electrons. I don't have potassium. Okay, so I'm going to cut that out. Achha, फिर इन सारों को हटा के which one is the lowest? The lowest is minus 0.41, I guess. And this one is fine because I do have Cr2 plus. Okay, that's the lowest, and I do have Cr2 plus, so it can lose electrons. So I'm going to write this equation. So it's Cr3 plus 1 electron and in equilibrium with Cr2 plus, and this is what, minus 0.41 moles. ठीक है, clear है सारों को कि how I figure out who's the highest and who's the lowest. ये clear है? Yes or no, Alicia? Asim, Shan, is this clear? और फिर end में जाके you just have to make the, I've written down the two reactions. Let this just. So I've written down the two reactions, and highest one gains electrons, and the lowest one loses electrons. Okay, so that's what the reaction is. And I have to multiply I have to make the number of electrons gained and lost equal. So in this case, I have to multiply the bottom equation by 6. Okay, so it's going to be 6. वो electrons बराबर होने चाहिए, ठीक है? And you can make the overall equation in just one go. Add up the reactants. So the reactants in the first one, what is the reactant in the first one? This is the reactant in the first one, and this is the reactant in the second one. Just add them together. So it's going to be Cr2O7 2 minus plus 14H plus 1 plus, I said don't add the electrons. The second equation, the reactant is 6 Cr2 plus. And what are your products in the first one? In the first one, the products that are getting formed are 2 Cr, 3 plus 7 H2Os. And in the second one, the product is 6 Cr, 3 plus 1 electron. I said these two will get added up to form 8 Cr, 3 plus. I mean, these two are the same thing. So you can just add them up. So it's basically 8. So they're forming 8 Cr3 plus. And that's your reaction. And you can calculate the E0 cell. So you can do that. And once you do that, the E0 cell will be higher potential minus lower potential, or reduction potential minus 0.41. क्या बना ये? It's 1.74. Right, that's 1.74 volts. Okay, is this clear? This one. अच्छा, अब ये कि now we're going to move towards a more difficult question. The difficult question is, it's kind of a chain reaction. ठीक है, करना simple है, ठीक है, just keep it simple. You got two things. You figure out the reactants, mark them in the equation, and you just try and figure out who's the highest and who's the lowest. The only thing you have to be careful about is, if you select anyone as the highest potential, that's the one that's going to gain electrons, then it should be your reactant that should be gaining electrons. It has to be Cr2O7 that, or some baki highest with it will reject you with it because it was Cl2 that was gaining electrons. I did not have Cl2. And when you select the lowest potential, it has to be your reactant that should be losing electrons. So the lowest, the ones that were rejected because you didn't have Cr. You didn't have Cr. The lowest, you didn't have potassium, right? So you rejected all of them. But coming back to this, now we're going to focus on the. So now we're going to focus on chain reactions. But the concept is exactly the same. So chain reaction is that you're going to have a first reaction and then you're going to have a second reaction. Okay? So it's going to be, there's going to be a follow-up reaction as well. So for example, I have a reaction of tin plus iodine, right? And I want to figure out what happens, right? Now this is a type of a chain reaction. And let's say that the iodine is in excess, which means the solution has a lot of iodine in it. Now I'm going to write down the reaction for iodine. I'm going to open the data booklet and iodine, this is the reaction. It's so this is the reaction, I2 plus 2 electrons. This one has a 0.54 volts. I'm going to figure out the electrode reactions for tin now. So वो tin को जाके ढूंढो कहाँ है tin? Here's, and remember tin, neutral tin. So here's one. This is, if you can see over here, this is tin. And that's the only equation for tin. The other one is for tin 4 plus and tin 2 plus. Tin, that's it. So I'm just going to copy that. This is tin 2 plus 2 electrons, and it's in equilibrium with tin. And what's the value? The value is minus 0.14 volts, right? So this is simple. You just have two equations. That's it. So the higher one is the one that's going to gain electrons. This is the higher, and this one is the lower. And it should be your reactants. These are my reactants. I've got iodine and I've got tin. we do, and it's iodine is the one that's gaining electrons and tin is the one that's losing electrons. So very quickly I've been able to figure out what the reaction is, because there were just two equations to deal with. So higher gains, lower loses. Add up the reactants. It's the first one has iodine as the reactant, and the second one you've got tin as the reactant. And then you've got the products. The products are, so in the first one it's 2i minus 1. In the second one it's tin 2 plus, right? So that's my reaction. याद clear है सारों को? अच्छा, अब now what's going to happen after this? It's just that you had tin and iodine, right? So there were just two equations. There was just one equation. Put it in the whole data booklet, you just have one equation for tin, which is this one. And the whole data booklet, you just have exactly one equation for iodine as well, which is 0.54. So what's happening here is you just had one equation each, and the highest gains electrons, and the lowest loses electrons. That's it. And so the highest gains electron, the lowest loses electron. Then you make the overall equation. Abhi, is that clear? This is the simplest question. Okay, is this clear? बाकियों clear है? हाँ, अब मैं उस पर आ रहा हूँ. अच्छा, now the thing is that the reaction is not going to stop over here. Okay, so after this first reaction, let's review the contents of the beaker. What does your beaker have? So the first reaction has happened. So the beaker now has I minus 1 and it's got tin 2 plus, right? So it's got I minus 1 and it's got tin, which has a charge of 2 plus, right? Plus the beaker has excess iodine. So there's excess iodine as well that's present. So these are the contents of the beaker after the first reaction. So what we are going to try and figure out is, will we be having a second reaction? The पिछले reaction को भूल जाओ. This is our starting point. This is the content of the beaker after the first reaction. So it's got iodine and I minus 1 both. So I'm going to write down those same reactions. So I've got iodine plus 2 electrons in equilibrium with, and this is 0. This one is 0.54 volts, right? But now I've got tin 2 plus. Instead of tin, I don't have tin anymore. This reaction where the tin has been converted to tin 2 plus. So the tin is now tin 2 plus. So I'm going to open the data booklet. I'm going to try and figure out the equations for tin 2 plus. And I'll realize that now I've got two equations for tin 2 plus. There's one with tin 2 plus over here, and there's another one with tin 2 plus and tin 4 plus. So I'm going to write both of them. So I've got an equation for tin 4 plus 2 electrons in equilibrium with tin 2 plus. और उसकी क्या value है? That's 0.15. And then there's another one which is tin 2 plus. And this one is minus 0.14. So now there's a chain reaction. There's another reaction that's going to happen after the first reaction has happened. So who's the higher potential in this in all of these? The higher is the first one. So that's the one that's going to gain electrons, right? And do you have iodine? We do have iodine, so that's fine. There is iodine in the beaker, right? And who's the lowest in all of them? The lowest at the moment is the bottom one. That's the one that's going to lose electrons. But the thing is, that I don't have 10. So I'm going to cut that out. I no longer have 10. पहले था, अब नहीं है. So out of all of these, which one is the lowest now? This is this one. So that means the lowest loses electrons. And do I have 10 2 plus? I do have 10 2 plus. So that's fine. So I can make the overall equation now, which is going to be, add up the reactants. It's going to be iodine plus 10 2 plus, and add up the products of the two reactions. First ka kya product hai? That's 2i minus 1, and the second one you got 10 4 plus. So you have a second reaction after the first reaction has happened. The first reaction, the 10 got converted to 10 2 plus. And in the second reaction, the 10 2 plus then got converted to 10 4 plus. So once the first reaction has happened, there has been a second reaction. And the 10 2 plus got further oxidized. Because that's a chain reaction. So मैं इसको जल्दी से go through कर लूँ कि पहले वाले में कोई issue नहीं था. You had 10 and iodine, you mix them together. So you had one equation for 10 and you had one equation for iodine. The highest gained electron, the lowest lost electron, and you got this equation. After this first reaction has happened, you determined or figured out the content after the first reaction. You figured out that the products are now I minus 1 and you got 10 2 plus in the beaker. Plus, since you're using excess iodine, so you've got some iodine left over, right? And then you tried and figured out, will you get another reaction? So you opened the data booklet again, you found iodine and I minus 1 reaction, and you found out that there were two reactions for 10 2 plus. That one was 10 2 plus in equilibrium with 10 4 plus. The other one was 10 2 plus getting converted to 10. Or उसके अंदर फिर आपने वही किया, then you figured out that there was another reaction, and the 10 2 plus got further oxidized to 10 4 plus. So ये clear है? Is this clear, this chain reaction? Just 1 second. But this is a very simplified chain reaction. You can get very complicated chain reactions as well. One thing is, बाकी तो अगली class में करेंगे chain reactions. One thing about chain reactions is you have to watch out for chain reactions where the substance has multiple oxidation states. क्योंकि tin जो है ना, it's got 10 2 plus, and then that 10 2 plus can get converted to 10 4 plus, right? So when a substance has multiple oxidation states, it can have multiple steps, and it can get oxidized in stepwise. Okay, there's no equation where 10 goes directly to 10 4 plus, right? Similarly, if you do reactions for vanadium, you have to watch out for chain reactions. That vanadium could turn to vanadium 2 plus, then vanadium 2 plus can get further oxidized to vanadium 3 plus, then that vanadium 3 plus can get further oxidized to, I think, I think that's 4 plus. And then that vanadium 4 plus can get oxidized to, what is VO2? So basically vanadium has multiple oxidation states. That's what I'm trying to state. So substances that have multiple oxidation states, you have to watch out for them that they can undergo further reactions. Okay? So इस तरह के और examples हम फिर next class में करते हैं. But is this clear? Is this perfectly clear, this one? You clear है? Alicia clear है? See, Boomer. चल ठीक है, फिर next class में इससे थोड़ा ज़्यादा मुश्किल करेंगे. Remember, most of the time the question is not that difficult. ठीक है? Actually, it can be difficult. इसके questions actually difficult हैं. खासतौर पे latest वाले. पहले आसान होते थे, लेकिन now recent questions are kind of more difficult. ठीक है? तो चलो कल बात करते हैं. Okay, everyone. Office.